Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
So let's move on to fourth topic. Here we'll look at water as another resource. Okay, so we looked at land, we looked at soil, we are going to look at water now. Now, just like land, water is also a very important part of our lives and very important resource. Water is actually considered to be elixir of life. Without water, life cannot exist. Okay, no living thing can exist without the water. Hence, water is very important. This is why water is called elixir of life. What is required for our everyday life? It is required for us to drink, cook, clean, wash, everything. And it is also required for industrial production. The factories need water. The big industries need water. Okay? And water is also a life giver. It gives life. It sustains life. Okay? So you can see water is very important. But while water is important on one hand, it is also very destructive. It can destroy lives. We said water is a life giver. But on the other hand, water can also take away lives. Example we can see from the floods. We see in the news, we watch, we hear in the radios, we read the newspapers, and every year we read about various occurrence or events of flood throughout our country, right? And so many lives being destroyed, homes of many thousands of people being destroyed, people being displaced, right? So you can see how destructive water can be, and it can destroy lives of thousands and thousands of people. But at the same time, we cannot forget and we cannot deny that water is extremely important for our survival. Okay? Settlements from the beginning of our civilization, settlements of people, human settlements have developed along the rivers, springs, lakes, oases and ponds. So wherever there was sources of water in the form of river, in the form of pond, in the form of lakes, human settlements have thrived there. Okay. Now, if you look at this small chart here or small diagram here, so the light blue, okay, it indicates water, and the grayish one indicates land. So you can see this is earth. And if we divide the earth into 4 halves, 1, 2, 3, 4, then we can see that out of the four, 3 parts are covered by water. So you can see there is plenty of water. Half or more than half of the earth, of the planet Earth, is covered with water, or half of the area, more than half of the area of earth is covered with water. Okay. Now, sources of water. What are the sources of water? Surface runoff and groundwater. The rain which falls and then runs off the surface, and the groundwater are the sources of water. Now, water is a renewable source, okay? But the process in which the water gets renewed, that process is called hydrological cycle, okay? So it has a specific process by which the water gets renewed and recharged, okay? Now, the water which gets renewed and recharged from the surface and the groundwater, that is called fresh water. Okay, like I said, water is a renewable source. It can be replenished. Okay, but even when we say that if the water gets over, if we have scarcity of water, water is a renewable source, we can produce it again. There will be a process which is called hydrological cycle, and more water will be produced. But water can still be limited. Okay, it can still be a limited resource, and people still face water scarcity across the globe in our country. Okay, And because of that reason, because of the water scarcity, it is important for us to conserve that resource. It is important for us to manage that resource. That is why we are going to now see why do we need to manage water and conserve water. Okay. So there are many reasons for it. One of the most important reason is the availability. The availability of water. Okay. So water is not available in plenty everywhere. There is some of the areas have water shortage, while other areas have enough water. Okay. So areas which have water shortage, most of the time they receive less precipitation. Precipitation means rainfall. So the areas which have less rainfall, they are dry and they have water shortage, and those areas are also prone to droughts. Okay, they have very bad harvest. Their irrigation becomes difficult because they don't have water. The land is very dry. Okay. So the availability of water can be impacted by the precipitation, by the rainfall which happens seasonally and annually. Okay, rainfall is a very important factor which influences the water availability. Areas which have plenty of or enough rainfall, those areas are not so dry. They have rivers. The rivers will be well fed by the rain, and those areas can have water. Okay, enough water, if not more than enough. But other areas where the precipitation or rainfall is very scarce, those areas will be dry and they will have droughts. Okay. Now availability, we said that availability of water is very important. If the availability of water is short, or if the availability of water is reduced, then there is more shortage of water. There is more scarcity of water. But availability is not the only cause for the water scarcity. Okay, let us look at other causes. Excessive use of water can also lead to water scarcity. Overutilization and even unequal access to water can also lead to water scarcity. Okay, if we keep on using water more than what we need, that is called excessive use. That will go on to make that will cause water scarcity. Overutilization, same thing, can also cause water scarcity. And if there is water but the access to that water is not equal, some people do not have equal access, some people do not get as enough water as you and I get, so that also leads to water scarcity. Now let us look at integrated water resource management or multi-purpose river projects. So this is a water conservation method. Okay, it's a method used or applied for water conservation and management. Now water conservation and management with the help of building river projects, with the help of building dams, these have been practiced in our country since ancient times. Okay, archaeologists and historians have found that in Harappan civilization, these kind of practices were also done. The people there, they also conserved and managed their water resource. Okay, so for water conservation and management, multi-purpose river projects become very important. Okay, now let us look at one of the aspects of that multi-purpose river project, and that is dam. Now what is a dam? Dams are like reservoirs where water is reserved, like a tank, but in a massive size. Okay, or lake or impoundment. So water reservoirs or lakes, they look similar to what dams look like, but they're created by a barrier built across the flowing river. So if the river flows through here, right? it goes, the dam is built here. So across the flowing river, a barrier is built. Okay, this is called a dam. Alright. Now this barrier obstructs or retards or directs the flow of the river. Okay, they obstruct, they stop the flow of the river. They also direct the flow of the river. They make the river flow slowly, not as fast as it used to. So that is what the barrier does. Through this or over this, water flows continuously or intermittently. Through that barrier, water flows, continues to flow, but sometimes water is not made to flow continuously, they are stopped. And sometimes there are small windows which are opened, and then the water flows time to time, not every time. Okay, not continuously like a river. Okay, so intermittently means time to time. Now these dams, why are they built across the flowing river? They are built for the usefulness, proper usefulness of river or the rainwater. The water can be properly used, utilized. Because of that reason, these barriers are put across the flowing river. Okay, the water which is collected as a result of constructing the barrier, that is used to irrigate agricultural land. So the water is then channeled for agricultural purpose. Okay, but today dams are used or built not only for agricultural purposes. They are built to serve other various functions as well. Okay, so what are they? They control floods. They check soil erosion, they provide water for irrigation, they provide water for drinking purposes, they generate electricity, they provide recreational sites or opportunities, they provide inland navigation, they preserve wildlife and also develop fisheries. Okay, so these are the various other functions that such dams do. Okay. Because of this reason, because of the functions that they do other than just helping or aiding the irrigation, this is why they are referred to as multi-purpose project, because their purpose, the purpose for which they are built, that is not only one, but there are multiple purposes. Okay, hence multi-purpose projects. After independence, India, our country, initiated planned development of economic activities. We already very briefly know about 5-year plans, right? So all these plans were made for the economic development of our country. Now, the main reason, one of the main reason for such decision, for such initiation, was to achieve self-reliance, was to make sure that India became independent in a way, in a sense that it does not have to depend upon another country. Okay, so self-reliance was one of the goal, and improvement of the standard of living of the people in India. That was another ambition of the government of our country. Okay, so as a result of this aim, as a result of this decision, multi-purpose river projects were also set up, or they were also undertaken. That's why Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister of our country, he called river valley projects as the temple of modern India. Okay, and why he called it the temple of modern India? Because he said that these projects are going to blend development of agriculture and village economy with the industrialization and development of urban economy. So what he's trying to say is that these projects will bring together agriculture, village economy, urban towns, all these things together, and they will work towards development of all sectors. Okay, so it will be a blend of development where not only one sector or village sector is developing, but the urban sectors are also developing. Not only the agriculture is developing, but the industry or industrial sector is also developing. So hence the blend of development. All right. Now, although it sounds very nice, it sounds like a good decision and a good step taken by the government of our country. But over time, there were many groups, environmental groups, they began to raise objections. Okay, they began to protest against these developments of multi-purpose river projects. Okay, they began to question the utility of these projects. They began to ask what the purpose of these projects were, or who are these projects benefiting, who is benefiting from these projects, who are being helped by these projects. Okay, so as a result of this, these multi-purpose projects, they came under great scrutiny and opposition. People began to raise questions, they began to criticize such development or such projects. Okay, and they also caused social movements, new social movements. Okay, now why were these happening? Why were people beginning to question? Why were social movements beginning to come up to raise their voice against the setting up or establishment of such multi-purpose river projects? Because the construction of these large dams were causing displacement of the local people. The people living in that area were being displaced as a result of the construction of the multi-purpose river projects. Okay, these local communities, as a result of such construction, they had no access and no control over the resources which they are supposed to have. They were using the river, they were using the land around the river, and it was all fine. But now with the building of the dams, they were made to go out of that area, but at the same time now they could no longer use the resource that they had been depending upon. Okay, they had to give up their land and they had to give up their livelihood, the ways in which they carried on their life. Okay, so one of the example of such situation is Narmada Bachao Andolan or Tehri Dam Andolan. Okay, now this began in the late 1980s. Okay, and here the opposition who raised their voice against the Tehri Dam, against the construction of this Tehri Dam in the Narmada River, they brought worldwide attention through their protest. Okay, and they gave a message to the world of how this dam was displacing people from the area of the Sadar Sarovar Dam across the Narmada River. Okay, they told the world through their protest, through their opposition, how the people were made to displace from that area. And the people had displaced or spread because they were forced to go out of that area and spread over the states of Gujarat, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. And you will not believe the number of people who were forced to displace were more than 2 lakhs. So you can imagine how great the impact of that construction of the dam was. Okay. So that is one example. Now, dams and its construction or the construction of projects, the multi-purpose river projects, they also lead to conflicts. And these conflicts are between people wanting to avail the benefits from the same river, same water resources. For example, we can see Sabarmati Basin farmers, which happened in Gujarat. There the farmers protested against the quantity of the water being supplied to the urban areas. So the farmers said that this water resource is useful for us, but then it was being directed towards the urban areas. Okay, urban areas. So they began to have a conflict between the urban sector and the rural sector. The other objections which were raised against the building of such multi-purpose river projects, they were for the sedimentation in the reservoir. They said that the sediments were being accumulated in the reservoir. So when the river flows, it brings sediments, it brings sand, it brings clay, it brings fertile soil. So that soil becomes deposited over time on the banks of the river, and it makes the surrounding area fertile. But with the building of the dam, it forces the river to deposit the sediments on the bed of the river. Now with that, what happens? It over time it makes the river or the water in the dam to overflow, and that causes flood. Okay, but the irony is the dams are supposed to protect the area or stop or prevent flood occurrences, right? But if instead of preventing the flood, it is causing flood, then that gives an opportunity for those to raise their voice in opposition against the construction of dams. Now, construction of dams were also inducing or were also causing earthquakes, waterborne diseases, pest and pollution of water. So because of these, objections were also raised. Now, when the flood in Gujarat and Maharashtra happened in the year 2016, then that flood caused destruction. Okay, that flood was also one of the examples or one of the event which came up as a result of the opposition raised by the people against the building of the multi-purpose river projects. Okay, now water disputes arise even among different states, not only between farmers and the city dwellers, but water disputes also arise among the states, one state against the another. Now this is caused due to the problem of sharing the costs and benefits of the multi-purpose project. So they cannot decide, or they have arguments and disarguments about who invests how much in the building of that project and who reaps the benefit or more benefit than the other through the project. Okay. Now let's look at rainwater harvesting. Now this is one of the methods used for conservation of water. Okay. Now rainwater harvesting is done in for two reasons. Okay. First is that it stores rainwater in containers above or below the ground, and it is charged into aquifer for its use later. Once it is put in the aquifer, you can use it later. Okay, these are the reasons for which water harvesting is done. Now, many believe that water harvesting has a bright future. Okay, and it will be a very important socio-economical and environmental alternative for the people. It is good for the environment and it can also help in the development. Okay. Now, it is already being used for domestic water harvesting is already being used as a method for conserving the water, to use the rainwater for domestic and agricultural use, and it is used extensively throughout the world. Okay, and it is also widely accepted technique and it has wide application. All right, the only requirement that we need is rainwater and container for the water harvest. For the rainwater harvest, okay, we don't need much, and the water which can be collected can be directed to plants, trees or lawns, or even to aquifer to use later. Now, what does rainwater harvesting do? Why do we need to follow, or why do we need to do rainwater harvest? Now, rainwater harvesting increases water availability. Okay, it checks the declining water level. Okay, it is environmental friendly, it does not damage the environment, it improves the quality of groundwater through the dilution of fluoride, nitrate and salinity. It prevents soil erosion and flooding, especially in urban areas. Okay, so this is why we need to do water harvesting. Now, Cherrapunji is one of Cherrapunji in India. It receives highest rainfall. Okay, it's a place in India which receives highest rainfall. But it will be surprising for you that Cherrapunji faces water shortage. And you must be wondering why it receives heaviest of the rainfall and still it faces water shortage. How is that possible? It is because of extensive deforestation and because no efforts have been made towards the rainwater harvesting, because of which Cherrapunji faces water shortage. Okay. Now, due to the rainfall, the topsoil runs off, and then that leads to soil erosion. Now, because of the soil erosion, entire stretches, large stretches of hillsides are completely denuded or devoid of greenery. When the soil is eroded, then the fertility of that area is gone, and without the fertility, the vegetation cannot prosper. So, because of that, the entire hills in Shillong, Meghalaya area, that area has been denuded of its greenery. Okay, so in Meghalaya, Shillong, rooftop rainwater harvesting now has become very common. Okay, they have begun to rainwater harvest, and that water is being used to overcome water shortage that they have been experiencing. So here is an image which will help you understand how rainwater harvest is being done. So the rainwater is collected, okay, collected in a container. So you just need rainwater and the container where it is deposited. Okay, you can also use a filter to filter the water and then deposit or collect it here for future use or for use in the garden, for use for drinking, anything. Okay.